Scaling Community of Practice welcomes you to our webinar hosted by the Agriculture and Rural Development Working Group, and to this webinar titled Making an Impact, Social Differentiation Matters. Hello, everyone. My name is María Boa, and I am the moderator for today's session. I am the former scaling coordinator for the International Maize and Wheat Center, CIMIT, and I'm currently doing my PhD at Cornell University, so I'm still around. And before jumping into the topic of why social differentiation matters in development in practice and presenting our amazing speakers of today, I want to invite Leonard Woltering, our chair of the Agriculture and Rural Development Working Group, to give some opening words. Leonard, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maria. So my name is Leonard Woltering. I work for CIMIT and GIZ here in Mexico. And together with Julie Howard, Mark Huizinga, Frank Place, and Maria, who you heard speak already here, we are chairing the Agricultural Working Group of the Community of Practice. And the Community of Practice is a network of more than 1,000 development professionals. And we have the ambition or the goal or the objective, if you want, to improve the quality of scaling efforts and encourage more development actors to adopt a scaling mindset and use best practices. The community is voluntary, so if you want to join us, please do. I will copy paste a link to the website here in the chat. And yeah, thank you so much for the speakers to take the time to present today and to interact with our members and the audience. I think this is a very, very interesting topic, and maybe I think, Erin, we were saying it was actually easy to prepare because I think it was felt overdue and such an important thing. I have a little bit of a personal experience with this. I developed together with a team a scaling scan tool 5 years ago, and we were updating it. And then we said, okay, let's have a gender version of that as well. And in developing the gender version, we actually said, this is ridiculous. You cannot have a gender version and a non-gender version. So we said, no. The next version is going to be gender sensitive, a 3rd edition of the scaling scan. So I'm totally on board with Erin and Lydiah here, and I'm really happy that they took the time to join us. So I hand back over to Maria. Good luck, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leonard. So as he mentioned, we would love to hear more about you and your work from the speakers, from the people attending today. If you want to share your insights of your work, send us an email, connect with us, check our webpage of the Community of Practice, and follow us on social media. We're very active there too. And we want to hear from you right now. So if you are a development practitioner on gender and social inclusion or related with with social differentiation, please write in the chat. Who are you? Where are you? Where are you right now? And what is your expertise? We want to know who is in the room. That will be great. So into today's business. When we were organizing this session, we wanted to have a space to recognize the importance of who are we innovating with and for, and have a space to discuss who's working on these topics. So, as you know, Achieve Impact is a complex adventure. It's not that there is no one easy route here. So understanding social differentiation is key to unlocking the potential of the communities that we're working with and for. And when we work together to address social differentiation, we can create a future where everyone has the opportunity to thrive and contribute to a more sustainable world. So where to start? What have we already learned? So that's something that our speakers can give us a hint for today's presentation. So to start, we have 2 presentations today. The first presentation is going to be by Erin McGuire. She's the Associate Director of the Horticulture Innovation Lab, and she manages the global research and partnerships focused on improving the lives of smallholder farmers and their communities through horticulture. And she particularly specializes in diversifying agricultural innovation pipelines and equity in scaling. For our second presentation, we have Lydiah Miriti. She's a senior research scientist at Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization, CARLO, and she's also a consultant on gender and community development research. Her research is on gender responsiveness in all sectors, with emphasis on crop agriculture and livestock value chains. So you don't want to hear me talk. I will give this now the space to Erin to give us her presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Leonard. I'm very excited to be here today. I have often been on the other end of these webinars, listening to all the incredible expertise that is a part of the scaling community of practice. So I'm grateful to be here today talking about social differentiation and responsible and effective scaling with Gender Up. And also really happy to be presenting with Lydiah Miriti as well. This is the second time we presented together, and it's always a pleasure. So as Maria said, I am going to be speaking on social differentiation, but also giving a little bit of a background on where social differentiation and the impacts of social differentiation come from. So talking a bit about responsible and effective scaling and the literature and theory that comes with that. And then I'll be talking about how you can operationalize a lot of these lessons from the literature, empirical evidence, etc., through a tool called Gender Up. And I'll give a little bit of experiences with Gender Up. But first, I'll tell you a bit about myself. I am Erin McGuire. I am the Associate Director of the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Horticulture. I'm filing my dissertation in a couple of days, so my fingers are getting very itchy on my PhD, but that is almost happening. But I have worked at the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for about 6 years. And Feed the Future, for those of you who don't know, it's the US government's response to hunger and malnutrition worldwide. Most of that funding goes to implementation projects, but about a quarter of the funding goes to research and innovation. And so we have 24 different Feed the Future labs that feed into that program that are generally focused on different crops or different parts of the agricultural value chain. And so we focus on fruits and vegetables, and I'm based at University of California in Davis. I also co-created Gender Up with my partners at Wageningen University and Research and the CGIR, particularly the Alliance and IITA. You all might know Case Lewis and Ann Raitvel and Bela Tekin. I'm presenting our work together today. I also recently was able to pilot a course with the help of Maria and Leonard, who were speakers, as well as speakers from, again, Wageningen and the CGIR, on innovating and scaling for social transformation in international food systems. And that brought together students from all over the world and practitioners from the CGIR, USAID, and other places. And we hope to keep that going in the future. For those of you who would be interested, stay tuned for emails coming out on that front. So to get into my talk here, the reason why social differentiation matters is that our goals are socially inclined. So when you look at the CDG, CGIR goals, or USAID goals, we're looking essentially at social goals. Out of the 17 SDGs, 10 of them mention vulnerable populations directly, and arguably all of them focus on how to equitably achieve sustainability. So the point is here, when we are using agricultural innovation as a means to achieve social goals, we aren't going to be effective agriculture research for development actors without understanding how our innovation affects different groups of people. So you can all look into your own organizations and see the social goals. So in order to achieve these social objectives, social goals, we need to consider these social differences within the populations and potential innovation users that we're working with. So here's Gender Up. Here's our classic illustration to show what we're trying to do with Gender Up, but also why social differentiation matters. So on the left-hand side is how we have traditionally thought of introducing innovation and scaling it. We essentially take an innovation and we put it into a community, and then we hope that everyone equally benefits from that innovation. However, what often happens is that different social groups have access to different resources, different networks, etc., which we'll go into a little bit today, and they aren't able to achieve the benefits or experience the benefits of the innovation is intended to give them. And often can actually exacerbate inequity within a community when those that have the power to reap the benefits of the innovation are able to be elevated socially, and those that aren't able to reap the benefits of the innovation further are marginalized. On the right-hand side, this is how really we are able to ensure that all people are able to benefit from innovations. So you have your core innovation, and then you're going to have mitigating activities and complementary innovations that are tailored specifically to the group of people that you're trying to benefit. And that is really what gets you to equal distribution of benefits. On the right-hand side, you can see that green box that's meant to represent core innovation actually says inclusive core innovation. And that's getting certain populations a little bit higher to enjoying the benefits of an innovation. And this is where I think that we need to be going as a community, is not just introducing innovation without thinking about gender and other marginalized population differences, and then trying to mitigate those activities and put in other innovations in order to make that innovation beneficial to a community. It's to innovate from the start and think about those communities from the start in order to innovate and curate our innovation to make sure that they're able to reap the benefits of it. And I will say that Gender Up began as a response to the many scaling tools that were emerging as we as a community understood that scaling was a critical part of innovation. And if you don't have a path for users to use your innovation, then you don't really have a solution. And so a lot of scaling tools emerged out of that knowledge, but none of them really considered gender or other social differentiation. So that is how Gender Up, the tool that I'll talk a little bit about later, was born. And so just to center us around the idea of why scaling and social differentiation might matter, is that the idea here is that by scaling an innovation, we are going to reach a larger amount of beneficiaries, and the more people that use our innovation, either from a horizontal perspective, lots of people in the field, for instance, or from an institutional perspective where they have more impact, the more effect that innovation will have on the external environment that you're trying to change in some way. And so the innovation, as it is used, makes some sort of development outcome possible, like better nutrition, more productivity, more income, etc. And this framework here shows the process of innovating and scaling and making an impact on the external environment. But these little stars are meant to depict where within the scaling process, there are important points of leverage to consider social differences in order for those to be reacted to and have a better impact from a social perspective within your external environment. So I won't go through this, but it's a slide to demonstrate that responsible and effective scaling as a result of social differentiation is grounded significantly in the literature. I think we as a community can move away from just talking about innovation or scaling activities being responsible. And it is important to be responsible with your innovations, and it's important to be ethically grounded, but it's also about being effective. If we want to achieve sustainable development goals, we are not going to be able to get there, as social theory and empirical evidence has shown over and over again, without considering social differentiation. So the tenets of responsible and effective scaling are grounded within literature bodies concerning responsible research and innovation, gender responsive research, and the science of scaling. And those tenets allow us to focus on user and non-users from a socially inclusive perspective, considering who will benefit or not from an innovation. It also acknowledges that innovation influences gender relations and dynamics and vice versa. So it's a constant iterative process, which we talk about a lot. And then anticipates socially differentiated effects from scaling through identifying relevant diversity. So this ex-ante analysis, or thinking through how your innovation is going to affect different communities of people, is actually quite new to this responsible and effective scaling area, and is drawn from the responsible research and innovation literature. And finally, as I was saying, it anticipates longer-term negative consequences and trade-offs associated with scaling. So first, just to understand what social diversity is and where you might pull your relevant diversity, it is around gender relations and dynamics, so gender norms. So this isn't necessarily the sex of an individual, but it's how gender is interpreted within a community. So whether or not women are able to use mechanized equipment, whether or not women or other marginalized populations have household decision-making power, those all relate to gender relations and dynamics and will impact the ability of certain groups of people, depending on their social and cultural norms, to be able to use your innovation. It also has to do with diverse farming practices and what is done regionally and locally in order to achieve goals. So making sure that you're adapting to local climates and cultures. So ultimately, social differentiation recognizes the difference in social backgrounds and economic status, which can help us design better solutions for agriculture development, and not just design better solutions, which is where I think we should go, but also scale the different solutions in order to be more socially inclusive and reach those social goals. So factors to consider for effective scaling is anticipating these longer-term negative consequences, considering socially differentiated effects. Identifying relevant diversity can often be the most challenging and is what Gender Up, the tool I'll explain in a moment, really walks you through. And then the trade-offs associated with scaling. One thing here that is important to consider is we talk a lot in scaling about unintended consequences. And you have a certain goal, of course, and you may achieve that goal, but along the way, you might have unintended consequences. And that often falls on women or marginalized populations. I would say when we think of trade-offs associated with scaling, we should consider our goals and we should consider our anti-goals. And I think at the beginning of projects, we would say that an anti-goal often is increasing inequity. Although that often happens within, or sometimes happens within projects, we call that unintended consequences. But in the beginning, if we can have an honest conversation about the trade-offs that our innovation might have within a landscape, we give back agency and accountability to project managers and researchers to really understand what they're trying not to do, as well as what they're trying to do. So you can take these lessons across the entire scaling pathway. So this is a linear representation of the scaling pathway. But you really want to think about how your teams are being developed when it comes to social differentiation and making sure that we have social and biophysical scientists represented. You want to think about how you're identifying the challenge and the solution. That will be relevant to the people you are trying to serve, users and non-users. And then how you're going to implement the scaling of your innovation. All those different activities will affect different groups of people differently and will also change who you're ultimately going to benefit. So different innovation packages will be different for different groups of people. This is a slide taken from Scaling Readiness, which is used within the CGIAR. And it shows on the left-hand side, innovation within an innovation package is readiness to be used. or I should say on the y-axis, and on the x-axis, we have the innovation use, so how often the innovation is being used. And scaling readiness essentially says that an innovation package is a factor of these two variables, the use of the innovation and the readiness. Can people see my slides? I'm going to keep going. So here's an example of how scaling readiness would look at whether or not an innovation package is ready to be scaled and what parts of the innovation package need to be increased in order for it to be ready. However, when you disaggregate its use and its readiness of these different innovations within the innovation package, you see that it's very different for men and women. And as you enter in intersectionality and other types of marginalized groups, it would also be different. So innovation packages look different for different groups of people. The appropriate innovation package may differ along gender and social identity lines. The appropriate scaling strategy may need to be different, and mitigating activities may need to additionally be different. So enter in Gender Up, which is a tool that is meant to help innovation teams take all these lessons from the literature and things that we know to be true about social differentiation and the impacts and operationalize them. Generally, it's about a day's worth of work in an engaged workshop with around 8 to 9 people or 8 to 10 people. And you need a Gender Up facilitator and hopefully a mix, a diversity in your innovation team. So these are the elements of Gender Up. To assist in avoiding negative consequences and spreading the benefits of an innovation, Gender Up leads an innovation team through these 5 stages that include discussion and debrief to best prepare to avoid unintended consequences or develop an innovation for a certain social goal and successfully scale. So Gender Up uses facilitated team discussions with Miro boards, individual surveys and videos and presentations on team dynamics, gender and agriculture, intersectionality, and mitigating activities, all to increase capacity for gender aware and scaling. And ultimately in stage 5, you end up with a scaling strategy that is more inclusive and less likely to cause harm, hopefully to actually benefit marginalized communities. And I'll say that Gender Up is unique in that it also asks innovation teams to reflect on their own positionality. So who's leading the team? What blind spots might there be? Who's missing from the table? And encourages partnership from there. So some of the change strategies that we have seen and employed in Gender Up are around team expertise and dynamics. So building capacity of the project team itself on gender responsiveness. And like I said, partnering with established experts in the community, addressing gender norms, which might impede women's ability to use and benefit from an innovation, changing communication strategies, such as radio or women extensionists that are more accessible to women farmers, and then training that occurs during times of day that labor requirements for marginalized populations might not be as necessary, or incorporates providing meals and childcare. So just a few examples before I close up here. When innovation teams go through the Gender Up process, they are able to find more concrete ways in which to be inclusive. So for example, an innovation user went from being farmers that produce for the market to rural low-income women who may not have decision-making power in their homes. So by changing the innovation user to something much more specific, they were able to develop a scaling strategy that met the needs of that population. Additionally, training went from engineering training needed to ensure smooth running of machinery and machines and factories to training when women are available and in an accessible location. Training focuses on skills necessary to understand and implement quality standards. And then finally, Scale strategies being a general statement for maybe their proposal, market products as socially inclusive, building communities, to women farmer-to-farmer training, including quality standard certificates of completion, subsidies for complementary inputs through government programs, etc. So you really see that the plan is being expanded upon and operationalized if the intention was to be socially inclusive. So finally, this is the Gender Up website. I encourage you all to go there. You can also be in touch with me if you're interested in Gender Up. We can do a training for your team. And then we also are looking to train Gender Up facilitators as well. So as I said, Gender Up right now includes a facilitator. And so we do a training of the trainer in order for organizations to have their own Gender Up facilitator on staff and work with innovation teams. And finally, we're moving, as I said, to develop Gender Up to guide teams toward choosing innovation for social outcomes rather than just at the scaling stage. So right now we take scaling teams, innovation teams that have an innovation ready to scale, but we're working on how do you develop innovation specifically for social transformation. And Maria actually is a part of a working group with me that is putting that together, at least the foundational pieces of it. So I will end there. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm happy to answer questions at the end.
Thank you so much, Erin. Lots of information. I really appreciate that you give us a chance to understand from where are you coming on the topic of social diversity, and yes, how relevant it's to think about the unintended consequences of our innovation processes, and not falling in love of the solution, but of the problem, and really thinking about how we can scale those outcomes that we are aiming, ending poverty, hunger, and not really increasing inequity in that journey. So for our next speaker, we have Lydiah Miriti, Dr. Lydiah Miriti, senior researcher scientist at Carlo in Kenya. Lydiah, are you ready?
Yeah, I am.
Perfect. The floor is yours. I'm not sure we can see your screen. Can
Okay.
you?
I can.
You can?
I
Perfect.
can also see the screen. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I can see it too.
Okay.
Please, Lydiah. Thank you.
So I start. Do I go on?
Please.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you. So good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lydiah. I'm presenting a presentation titled Innovations for Youth and Women, Small-Scale Farmers, a strategy to enhance participation in improved beekeeping as a climate change resilience in Kenya. You can see I have a picture there to show that this beekeeping, the improved beekeeping is already gender friendly. Go to the next slide. Maria, okay. So we are asking what the current status of beekeeping in Kenya. As you can see the pictures there, I am seeing that honey and other bee products are in high demand. People are becoming health conscious, and you can see there all the products that are produced from bee products. Continue. Those are industrial purposes. They are also derived from bee products. You can see ashuk police, beeswax cardos, and also something on hair. So all these products, they are derived from beekeeping. Continue. The current status of beekeeping in Kenya. Currently, beekeeping products are in high demand, as you've seen on the product, those products that I've already shown. But despite the high demand, there is inadequate supply of quality honey and other bee products. Currently, also by most producers who are local, they sell honey as raw, which is not refined, which does not, maybe it's not marketable. The bee products are also very costly. Currently, there is a lot of indigenous production methods. Beekeeping is also generational. So we say it's inherited from fathers to sons. And also there are many other gender inequalities. We can talk of cultural stereotypes and perceptions. Next slide. Here I am comparing versus the improved beekeeping. We are saying that the indigenous beekeeping is male dominated. It's generational, as you have seen in the previous slide. It's of poor quality equipment. Production methods are poor. It has low yields. It has less value products. For example, honey is sold raw, which has few customers. On the other hand, we are saying the improved beekeeping, it bridges the gender gap that is witnessed in crop agriculture. We all know that in crop agriculture, it requires land, it requires a lot of labor, and we know that women and youth, they are constrained when it comes to access to land and access to labor. But we are saying that the improved beekeeping, you require less land. You can even keep a few beehives behind your homestead. It also requires less labor and less time. All these are factors that constrain especially women. Bees, they do most of the work. So your work is just to get the beehives, place them behind your house or wherever they are, and you leave the bees to do the work. The equipments are also durable and they are gender friendly. It is high yielding and it has high value products. Go on. Next slide. Here I'm showing the pictures or the photos. This is how the beehives, traditional beehives, look like. You can see they are placed very high on trees. So even men themselves, they have a problem on maybe when it comes to harvesting honey, because one has to climb the trees. And you can see also they are covered with materials that when it rains, still the water passes through and the hives are destroyed. So it's of very low quality. Next slide. These are still the local materials for harvesting and packaging honey. You can see on that top picture, left top, that's a man who is almost half naked, but he's harvesting honey using smoke from fire. This fire, it kills the bees, and also the man himself or the men, when they harvest using this method, they are also at a risk. Down there, you can see harvesting honey using locally available cooking oil cans, which are not hygienic. Next, these are the maybe locally available containers. That one is not bluebird, it's honey inside those cans, which are not durable, they are unhygienic. So we are saying the local materials, they lack quality for marketing honey, and also they attract few customers. Next slide. This is now the improved harvesting equipment for honey. We are saying women and girls can harvest honey easily. You can see now that's the full clothing where you protect yourself from head to toe. And you can see this is a beehive with honey and bees also. So you see those are girls, school girls, being taught how to harvest honey. That beehive already has bees in itself. So you can see the other picture, there's a young man there who has something that is called a smoker. It's just, it is called smoking the bees. So you just have to smoke them, and they'll be friendly when you are harvesting. So you can see the improved processing equipment. which are readily available. One just has to buy them and you continue using them. There's a locally available clothes which can be got by anybody, including those local women. Yes, so the filter tank there is basically used by farmer groups. So later on, you'll see I'm saying one of the interventions is for them to be in farmer groups where they can access most of these equipment easily. Next slide. These are improved packaging equipment. We are saying they are locally available, affordable, and they are of good quality. There is a value-added product there, which is a locally made cardos, which is easy to learn through trainings. Next slide. So I have just shown the difference between the indigenous or the traditional beehives or the equipment that are in traditional beekeeping and the improved one that now I went to research on. The problem was, we are saying the improved beekeeping has more potential compared to indigenous. However, its transfer by most of the projects to local communities is usually gender neutral. This is due to the fact that the projects transferring it, they ignore the following status. As we said earlier, they ignore that there is male dominance in the enterprise, the challenges of accessing initial capital, which affects mostly women and youth. They ignore the gender-related factors, that is time, mobility, marital status, which affects rural women. They also ignore the cultural perceptions and stereotypes. For example, when I was doing this study, I found that in part of the where I was doing the study, women could not join the beekeeping groups, especially during their biological cycle. That was 2016, which could maybe it has changed currently, but not much. Also, among the conservative Maasai, actually this is where I did the research, the men perceive women as children, hence they have nothing to offer. When you look at all these factors, they affect women and youth more in comparison to men. So women and youth are, especially the women, they are very vulnerable. Next slide. These were the study objectives. We were to examine participation levels of men, women, and youth. Also identify the gender barriers and the interventions that can make improved beekeeping gender responsive. Next slide. So the location of the study, I said earlier, it was in a county called Kajiado. It's a very conservative community, but they venture into traditional beekeeping. So this project, it was called Propua Angry Project. They went to at least to transfer this, to improve the traditional beekeeping in order to help the community. So they used 32 gender responsive farmer groups, and each group was issued with 5 improved hives each. They were required within 5 years to increase the number and also to at least access the hives individually in their homes. So the study was aimed at assessing the participation levels from these groups. Next slide. The key findings: women are actively involved in the improved beekeeping, as we found in that community. However, in comparison to men, we found that the participation of women was very low, especially in parts of the chain or the value chain of the beekeeping, which has high value. Most young men had also inherited traditional hives from their fathers, which could not help them. The low participation was due to lack of access to the following factors. We found that most women in those groups, they retained the traditional hives they had, so they were not able to access the improved hives. Also, there were initial trainings that were offered by the project with that name for them to continue attending those trainings. in Karo Transmara. There was in that community, there was an institution for Karo, where now the demonstration plot was placed, and they were supposed to be going there. Yet, most of them lived very far from that demonstration plot. So we found that especially the most women who are in the gender-specific groups, they only received the initial training. Also, better marketing channels. We found that especially women in male-handed households, they could not move around, especially during market days, to sell their honey products. They could only sell within their localities, and which attracted very low prices. Also, we found that especially in male-headed households, income from bee products actually was an excess by their husbands. Next slide. So the main barriers we are seeing is it is capital constraint. Okay, the main barrier to participation, we are saying first, there is capital constraint, which affects women and youth who are already new in this business, yet they really want to venture into it. There is also lack of trainings, because women, they need trainings near their localities. There is also lack of access to competitive markets, lack of awareness initiatives on value addition, gender-related factors such as mobility, time, and marital status affected them, because we found that most women, they are not able to move around because of the household chores, their time, and marital status comes in because the married women, they were more vulnerable in comparison to the unmarried ones. So decision-making power in male-headed households was also a problem, because the men want to make all the decisions. So there was also cultural perceptions and stereotypes. Next slide. So here I am comparing, this is a comparison of apiaries, where the beehives are kept is called an apiary. So I'm comparing an apiary. On the left side, you can see an apiary of, this was a widows group. Widows, the women whose husbands had died, they were in a group. They were trained, the initial training, yet they lived very far away from where the demonstration plot was. So you can see, you're supposed to maybe to take care or to manage an apiary. You can compare with the apiary where the group entails all men. Actually, in that group, only one woman was there, because they said that all the other women, they were deterred from attending by their husbands. So we are saying all the improved beekeeping groups, as I have said earlier, they received 5 hives each. Most groups that were gender integrated and gender specific for men, they had increased the 5 hives. They had well-managed apiaries. Majority, they owned improved hives as individuals. However, the opposite was most in the gender specific for women groups. They had not increased the 5 hives they were given. Their apiaries were poorly managed, and none of them had an improved hive. All this increased the gender gap in participation in parts of the chain with high value. Next. So in conclusion, we are saying gender, maybe, or sex, because it's male and female, age, household type, and marital status influenced participation in improved beekeeping. And these factors, they increased the gender gaps in stages of the chain with high value. Challenges in capital, gender-related factors impacted negatively on participation levels, especially in access to improved equipment and trainings. Women and youth are more vulnerable, yet their new improved beekeeping, their need for capital and moral support is greater than that one of men. And we see that men's control of high-value assets continue to widen the gender gap in the value chain. Yet, the intention of the project was to increase income and raise communities' standards of living. Next. So we are saying we have given interventions that can enhance gender responsive participation. We are saying some of these interventions or the scaling up now, because this is what we are talking about, can entail household empowerment initiatives, which can minimize power imbalance and cultural stereotypes. These empowerments also can encourage sharing of improved equipment and labor. Sharing of the equipment can also motivate women and youth to transit gradually from traditional equipment. Also, we can have formation of gender-responsive farmer associations where they can use to purchase good quality equipment as a group and sourcing from better markets. We are saying also that trainings are supposed to be taken to within the localities where women can access them. As for access to capital, we can link farmers or those women, especially the women groups, with affordable rural financial players and also with the county governments. Also the B sector, because when I was doing this study, when I went through the policies, they are gender neutral. We are saying the policies can be revised at least to include gender as key to achieving extra income, food security, and poverty alleviation. Next. This is a case study of an improved beekeeping. We are saying it's gender and youth friendly. You can see that woman. She has an own apiary of improved beehives, and below it is her shop. She is with a man from a project that now transferred that improved beekeeping in our area. There's another case I'm quoting there, a case of a young man who, because he comes from the climate-prone county, he also accessed beekeeping, or he kept improved beekeeping, and he has been able even to educate his children using the income from improved beekeeping. Below there, I'm saying currently many women that are, of course, middle class have ventured into small-scale improved beekeeping in their homes. Here in Karo, we have a case of a retired female research assistant who is currently supplying us actually with quality honey. So all in all, this enterprise is gender friendly. Women and youth can really earn from it, but we have seen all the barriers that needs to attract various interventions. Next. Thank you. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Lydia. Such an interesting and also relevant, grounded case. I was impressed about how part of your insights were showing us how access to land, labor, time are main constraints for women and youth in Kenyan communities that you are working with. So we have a couple of minutes for questions and also to having closing remarks. I already have a question here from on the chat from, I think it's Johannes Lin. This question is for Erin. Oops, 1 second, I just lost it. So Erin, Johannes is asking, how do we convince project team leaders who tend to feel overstretched already with all sorts of institutional demands on their limited time and resources to add the gender of tasks to their many existence tasks? They already feel like the donkey below. Also, Lydia, if you want to think about the case in Kenya for adding to that response, that would be great. Erin, please.
Thank you, Johannes. Yeah, I think Lydia's case really highlights why it's critical to be thinking about gender up, or at least social differentiation, because you can start with a goal that's admirable and actually contribute to its anti-goal. So to frame the answer to this question is, we in the Agriculture Research for Development historically have been very familiar with heterogeneity within our physical landscapes. That's something that's really familiar, particularly because we've had a lot of biophysical scientists and technocratic approaches to how we make change within our systems. However, there's just as much heterogeneity within our social landscapes. Just because we can't see them doesn't mean they aren't absolutely there and absolutely parameters in which we must consider. If project managers want to achieve the goals that they are assigned through the Sustainable Development Goals via CGIAR, USAID, etc., then you have to consider social differentiation. When we look at agriculture innovation systems and the scaling frameworks that are operationalized within them, we have essentially stripped them of human components, which doesn't make any sense because we are humans controlling the upstream part of the innovation system, and there are downstream effects that all incorporate differences within social experiences. So it's a little, I don't want to be dramatic, but delusional to not consider social factors when you're trying to achieve social goals. So we spend years developing the technocratic and the biophysical aspects of innovations. I think, just as Leonard's saying, we need to mainstream gender and social differentiation within our tools, such as Scaling Scan or whatever project management tools you're currently using, and spend at least a day to think about the social impacts of your innovation.
Thank you so much, Erin. Lydiah,
Okay.
just to add to that question, and to, if you want to take also very quickly the question from Julie. Here
Okay.
she asked, would you say a little bit more about why the results of the women-only groups were poorer? Do you conclude that it is better to avoid women-only groups and focus more on improving women's participation in mixed groups?
I would say to avoid the all women groups because we need them. I would say, like what Erin said, the physical, whoever is transferring a project needs to go and do a needs assessment in a community, because like in Kenya, we have different communities. Maybe like in that community, men owns the beehive. So if you want to go and increase the income from such a community, you're supposed to go and do a needs assessment, do empowerment trainings first, so that you can integrate the whole household, and don't also you understand the cultural perceptions, you understand the stereotypes in such a community, because even if you avoid an all women groups, a woman will not be allowed even to go in those mixed groups. You find that group that I showed, which was all men. Initially, they had 6 women. Only one was left because all the others, they were told by their husbands not to go to that group. So you see, all we need is at least go and understand the community first. Do a needs assessment, which is gender integrated. That's all that we tell the physical scientists to do, or anybody who is transferring a project. Know the community first, and also know their perceptions, know who owns that crop, and that helps a lot.
Thank you so much, Lydiah. Yes.
Welcome.
Not following the ownership and decision process in our projects, in our context, is critical. I think, Richard, you are raising your hand, but you also wrote here in the chat. I'm gonna read it for you if that's okay. My experience is that even if you can increase women's income and livelihoods by a targeted gender strategy during a scaling effort, after the effort ends, men use their power in the community and the households to take over those assets and livelihoods. Changing those power inequities seems like a much longer effort than the normal 3 or 5 year program timeframe. Also, given the strong emphasis on localization and partnerships with local governments and policymakers, if these are male dominant, isn't it neocolonialism to push an agenda they don't support? I see that difficulty on changing the roles and patterns of behavior is not an easy task. Do you have any idea or want to answer to Richard about his perspective?
I can just quickly say really important points. There's a lot to respond to, but the timing of projects, of course, and the structure of agriculture research for development often don't support long-term social change. Your point around local communities being male-dominated, And to be perfectly honest, we deal with that globally. That's not just a local issue in the United States where I live. We are still struggling with male-female relationships. But it's an important point to understand your parameters and have that conversation around trade-offs. What are your goals and what are your anti-goals? And being able to plan according to that, and just having a clear-eyed vision of your landscape and what you can contribute to, don't want to contribute to, etc.
Thank you, Erin. Lydiah, what do you think about it?
I would say local communities are male dominated. It's only that there is patriarchy. We talk of patriarchal societies, but which the projects needs to understand first. That's what I said first, because in Kenya we've seen projects that have penetrated, and now women are earning income through those commodities. So it all depends on how you, from the planning up to implementation, it has to be participatory. You start with the community and you end with the community. I have found places where even a man has even started lending land to women after, it all depends how you start the project. Because in every community, I think we talk of patriarchy, but it all depends how you go about it. Because you remember when some projects came and they were talking of women empowerment, those projects failed totally. But when we talk of household empowerment, such projects, they have been seen to thrive. That's all I can say.
Thank you so much, Lydia. Yes, it is important to have the vision of a whole, of a system, rather than individuals, and think about it together from the beginning. So we are running out of time. Thank you so much. I just want to close this webinar with final messages from Lydia and Erin. Erin, if you can also add in your final message more insights on how gender up training how gender up training for trainers and how can anyone can be part of it, that will be great. To finalize this webinar, that will be great. Erin and Lydia, final key messages.
Sure. Yeah, my final key message is that we're trying to achieve social goals, so we must consider social differentiation in achieving them. Please email me if you want to be engaged with Gender Up, either from a facilitator point of view or from a team training point of view. We're also hiring a postdoc to focus on some of these issues. I'll put the link in the chat. Thanks again to the community of practice, the hosts, and my fellow presenter, Lydia.
Okay, thank you very much, community of practice. I am indebted to especially Elaine and Maria. Thank you for believing in me. We continue collaborating. I am very happy that you are knowing what is happening in Africa. Yes.
Thank you, Lydia. Yes, as Leonard said, you are keeping us honest, and you and your team are doing an amazing job. Eddie's and her team too. And it's about connecting, and that's why the community's practice is here for you and for any that is hearing us right now and want to be a speaker or share any other news or events that you have. Just reach out. We are all ears, and I hope that you have a fantastic day, evening, or wherever you are, that you are doing what you love, and hopefully see you soon in our next webinar and event.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone.